All right, let's get into the mechanics of the UK housing market. What's happening for the rest of 2025? This deep dive uses data from, the Land Registry, Halifax, Nationwide, Rightmove, the usual suspects. Our mission: figure out why everyone talks long-term growth, but, well, the short-term reality check seems to be kicking in hard.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable, actually, that sudden ceiling on optimism. The current average UK house price is hovering around £269,000. But the expert consensus for this year's growth, it's really cooled off. We're talking a pretty modest range now, maybe 1% to 4%.
1 to 4%. Yeah.
Exactly. And we saw some big revisions mid-year. The Homeowners Alliance, Rightmove too, they both pulled their forecast back from 4% down to just 2%.
Okay, so still technically going up, but really just crawling along. That 2% tells me two things are sort of holding things back. Intense seller competition, maybe.
That's definitely part of it. And critically, those mortgage rates, they just aren't falling as fast as everyone hoped,
Yeah.
6 months back. Not enough to fuel a real boom.
Right, okay, so this is where the data gets a bit tricky. You mentioned distinguishing sold prices from asking prices?
Absolutely crucial. The most reliable stuff, the Land Registry, that's actual completed sales, it shows sold prices were up, plus 2.4% annually, hit about £270,000 back in July.
Okay, 270 PA. But you mentioned their methodology. It changed this year. Should we still rely on that average if they calculate it differently now?
It's a fair question. Basically, they integrated more detailed data. It makes the figures less jumpy month to month compared to, say, private surveys. So yeah, it gives us the most, accurate picture of what buyers actually paid.
Got it. More stable data.
Now contrast that with Rightmove's asking prices. They actually fell quite sharply in August, down negative 1.3%.
Huh. That's fascinating. So asking prices dropping while sold prices are still creeping up. That must mean high supply, right? Sellers putting properties on the market.
Exactly. We're hearing reports of inventory at maybe a 10-year high. So sellers, they're having to adjust what they're asking for pretty quickly if they want to sell.
Okay, so where did all this inventory, this sort of market chaos, come from recently?
Well, a big factor was policy shock. Specifically, those stamp duty changes that came in on April 1st this year.
Ah, yes, the deadline effect. That created huge turbulence, didn't it? Everyone rushing to buy before the rules changed.
Massive, something like 177,000 transactions in March alone. Just boom. Then, inevitably, April saw that dramatic cool down. That short-term volatility definitely pushed inventory levels up.
Makes sense. But you also said there's some support for moderate growth later this year.
Correct. There's a stabilizing force, too, the Bank of England. They cut interest rates back in August. That helps ease mortgage costs a bit. Makes borrowing slightly cheaper, which should, help sustain some demand.
Okay, critical stabilization then. But these national averages, they always hide what's really going on regionally, don't they? The big growth stories aren't likely in London, I imagine.
Not at all, no. The biggest annual jumps, you're looking at Northern Ireland, up plus 9.5%, and the Northeast, plus 7.9%. Meanwhile, London's got the highest average price, sure, around 561,587, but it's basically treading water.
Yeah.
Growth is just plus P2.7% annually. Really slow.
So the more affordable markets are sprinting ahead, while the really high-end market is lagging. Any specific predictions, like hot spots or cold spots?
Yeah, the sources flag Manchester as a likely hotspot going forward. Wales, on the other hand, might be a bit of a cold spot. That's partly due to increases in stamp duty on second homes there.
Right. And we have to talk about first-time buyers. It sounds incredibly tough for them.
It is. They're facing some of the toughest affordability hurdles in, maybe 70 years. But the sources do point to specific support schemes. Things designed to help, mostly around needing smaller deposits or using equity sharing, trying to get around those high borrowing costs.
Right. Schemes like shared ownership, yeah. Or the first home scheme, the one with the 30% local discount.
Exactly. And deposit unlock, too. That helps buyers get a new build with just a 5% deposit. These are really crucial alternative paths to owning a home when, traditional mortgages are so stretched.
Okay. So connecting all this, the bigger picture. Despite all the economic uncertainty, maybe political rumors before the November budget, the expert consensus is pretty clear. No price crash expected.
That seems to be the firm view. The underlying demand, it just seems too strong for a crash scenario.
Okay, wait. Let's just reconcile two things for you listening. Short term, we're talking maybe 1% to 4% growth this year. Flow. But then Savills has this long-term forecast. Average UK prices surging 23.4% by 2029, hitting £442,000. Where's that huge acceleration meant to come from if we're just crawling now?
Well, it really hinges on a few big assumptions. It assumes inflation gets under control, that interest rates keep coming down gradually, and crucially, that wages eventually start catching up with house prices. It's basically optimism based on the market finding its balance again after 2026. That equilibrium would then drive that faster post-recovery growth.
Right, that gives us the long-term context. Okay, now, a final thought for you to mull over. The source material gave a pretty clear warning, actually. It said if you're buying a home for the long run, one you can genuinely afford, trying to perfectly time the market by second guessing these indices, it's likely just a waste of time. So, what stands out to you about prioritizing that stability, that affordability, over the gamble of trying to time the market peaks and troughs? Something to chew on.